Military families have incredible stories of perseverance while navigating frequent moves, deployments, food insecurity, transitioning out of the military, and more. This is the place for them to share those stories, highlighting unique experiences of military families. Welcome to the Professional Dependent Podcast. Let's get going. So, Heather, besides being one of my absolute favorite people, why don't you introduce yourself however you want to do that to the audience?
Deal. I'm Heather Campbell. I'm an Air Force spouse and mom of three. I am an unintentional stay-at-home mom and an accidental advocate, which basically just means that some things made me mad and I decided to start talking about it and had a lot of success building that message and making a lot of connections and really making an impact for the military community. And I love what I do. I do it as a volunteer. It's very cool. But I am a military spouse and mom first. So those are my first two roles. They are not my identity of who I am, but they are my first two jobs. And so those do take priority for the majority of my brain space.
Awesome. You are only the second person to be a repeat guest because I usually try to keep things different and interesting, but you have grown so much in the advocacy space since we were last together in Eielson. And I think you were a guest in 2017 to tell people like from back when I first started doing the show.
Well, I
Um,
think it was right before we both PCS'd.
it
It was like,
was.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and if I think I don't remember if we recorded at the club or the play area.
We went to the play
We
area.
did because I think the kids were playing.
I think either the kids were playing or we had dropped them at like Awana. Like there's only
Yeah,
so many places you can go, and drop your kids at
right.
Eielson. So I think, there was very few places when you had like a coffee meetup or a play
Mhm.
date or like, we're gonna have a spouse club meeting. And it's like, okay, are we doing it after bedtimes when the kids are in bed, or
Right.
which of the two kid-friendly places are we doing it? Because there just wasn't a lot of options.
That's it.
Yeah.
And so you say accidental advocate. I feel a lot of this, your advocacy is primarily centered around food insecurity.
Yes.
You are very vocal about it, and it's one of those things that honestly, it I was ignorant of it when you first started talking about it because I have been very fortunate in my world to where it really hasn't affected me directly. But then once you started talking about it and I started paying more attention to it, I was like, this is a way bigger problem than people realize.
Yeah.
And it's as I've looked deeper into it, I realized the indirect effect it has because it affects my kids' friends, it affects my friends. And even though it's one of those things where I don't see it in my house, I see it all around me now.
Right.
And so, how did you get started in this space for being an advocate for food insecurity?
Well, that term, accidental advocate, is actually borrowed from a friend of mine, Megan Harless. She is an accidental advocate in PCS reform. And so she wrote an open letter once that was like, hey, military, moving sucks and it's a mess, fix it, right? And then it
Mhm.
like blew up, and her husband was coming home from like a deployment, I think, and he was like, why are you on Military Times? And she's like,
See,
sorry,
what happened was
yeah, like this thing. So I love that term that she uses, that it really was birthed from this like space of being frustrated and
Mhm.
being upset and saying, what can we do? How can we fix this? Why aren't we talking about this? And food insecurity sort of evolved through my life of what I'm doing. So my background is in pediatric and family nutrition. I was in my doctoral program when I met my husband. And because I'm a military kid, I know that I can't use a clinical research career and
Mhm.
move every 2 or 3 years. That's just not an option.
Right.
Because I had gone from undergrad straight to doctoral work, I converted my work to a master's, left early, and essentially, we had this conversation of, are we going to stay long distance for 4 or 5 more years for me to finish this degree that I'm not going to use? Or do we want to get married and have kids? By the way, no pressure, but like I'm not walking away from a full ride doctorate for a boyfriend. So
It's fair.
not saying that we need to get engaged right now, but like, should I leave school?
Right.
And he was like, you should leave school. And I was like, okay, I'll leave school. Um, and then he waited and proposed like the week before I got my master's degree. I'm like, come on, man, like you made me wait this whole time. Um, But that's my background is in
Mhm.
pediatric and family nutrition. As a military spouse, like many of my peers, I've had to reinvent my career in multiple places. That's included working for Wick in 2 different states. Wick is the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program for women, infant, and children. So any woman who is pregnant or breastfeeding, and then children up to age 5. Now, there are income requirements for that. And as a registered dietitian, we often have medically complex kiddos who need just different follow up and, are getting extra care. And so they have to be seen by the dietitian in the clinic. So I did that in 2 different states and sort of taken jobs where I could, when I could. I worked in long term care for a while. So I'm actually, as a dietitian, I am a weight gain expert. All of my expertise comes from when either elderly patients or very young patients are not growing and gaining appropriately. So please don't ever run into me, anybody who's watching or listening, like at a social event, like, oh my gosh, have you considered like, I don't know, like consulting for a gym and weight loss? Y'all, that's not what I do. Like I help people grow and I help people gain. That's the area of nutrition that I practice. And so as we went forward with military life, right, it didn't go as planned. And we ended up in a remote location and we were at Eielson Air Force Base, 110 miles from the Arctic Circle. Dietitian career field is much like social work. It takes a lot of education,
Mhm.
medical boards. It doesn't pay great. And so being in a remote location where childcare is already difficult, in a career that doesn't pay great, we couldn't find a job for me that would cover the cost of childcare. So now we were a one income military family in a very remote, very expensive
Mhm.
location. We had 3 degrees worth of student debt. I had a scholarship for the majority of my graduate school, but my first year I did have to take out some loans because it was a partial scholarship. And,
Mhm.
and then I had some undergrad loans and my husband had some undergrad loans. So we were one income military family with 6 figures of student debt, and we missed the Wick eligibility, right? I knew about Wick. I had worked in Wick.
Mhm.
We missed eligibility by $87 a month.
Mhm.
So we did not qualify for income-based repayment for loans.
Mhm.
We did not qualify for WIC. We did not qualify for childcare help. We didn't qualify for anything. Because of my husband's job, he's an officer. He was a young officer at the time. There is an unspoken expectation that at every social event, you not only are paying the top tier ticket for yourself and your spouse,
Mhm.
you're expected to buy a second set to sponsor a lower ranking an enlisted or
Yep.
not junior officer, because we were junior officers, but
Right.
you're expected to buy a second set. So, around the base, there was no help. The only thing that was available was a budgeting class. Well, budgeting wasn't the problem. I worked in personal finance for years before becoming a dietitian. So budgeting wasn't the problem. The problem was we didn't have enough to go around.
Mhm.
By the time we paid for 2 growing kids, our expensive location, and student debt, it just was very, very tight and very intentional. So as we came out of that season, we had another child while we were there. So we had 3 under 5 in this really difficult season. And as we sort of came out of that, and we PCS'd and sort of got our footing, it gave me a chance to really look around and say, like, why was it so difficult? What was it that made it so hard? Our
Mhm.
first tour at Eielson. There's very much this connection of stressors and mental health. And, having a career, being a career woman and a researcher, and then not having a job at all and being home
Mhm.
with 2 children, a 1 and 2 year old, then later 3 under 4. I'm watching my colleagues get professor jobs and I'm making peanut butter and jellies and changing diapers. So there was very much a loss of identity. There was a
Mhm.
loss of career, lack of access to childcare. And I thought that marriage was hard because I must not be cut out for it. And motherhood was hard because I
Mhm.
must not be cut out to be a mom. It turns out actually 3 under 4 is just like a lot of kids.
Yeah, it's just a lot.
Um, Especially when there's nowhere that you can drop them off for like a mom's morning out, right? So it's just a lot. And my spouse was gone a lot. So I was often solo parenting. And then, finances were tight. And I thought, gosh, money's hard because I'm not working and we can't afford for me to work because we can't afford the childcare. And we're paying off student debt and the majority of it's mine. And like the burden on my family is me. Like I'm the problem and my family would be better if I wasn't in it. Right. There's this very real spiral,
Yeah.
especially that happens somewhere remote like Eielson. So as we sort of took a moment and reassess, like, okay, we made it out of this season. Like, let's take account and take a note of all the damage that was done. this was right around the time that the pandemic shut everything down and we all went virtual. I have a colleague who asked me to co-write a paper on the difficulty of feeding families with decision fatigue during the pandemic. And I also started a couple of projects working specifically in military spouse spaces. And I had a lot of opportunities to have these conversations of, actually, food insecurity is not happening to only our very, very young enlisted members. Like, we were an officer family and we had it. And here's the loopholes, and here's the gaps, and here's how it happened to us, and here's how this, this story unfolds for my family. And as it went, this was right as everything went virtual. And so those conversations just escalated to eventually serving on a coalition that sent a brief to the White House Hunger Conference last year. I've had the opportunity to brief flag officers and their spouses. I've visited with multiple senators and congressmen. It's been really, really interesting to see how it's grown, because I not only have this lived experience that's sort of an outlier in the data, right? I'm not in the bell curve, but I also have this expertise and this fancy alphabet behind my name that says I know what I'm talking about. So it's been a really unique accidental advocacy that I did not plan on doing when I got my degree, or even when my family went through it. But because I remember that season and how difficult it was and the impact it had on my family and my marriage, it's something that I'm willing to fight for the families that are coming behind me.
Wonderful. And what you just said, it's come up so many times in recent interviews that I've had with other people, with other spouses. The people that get into advocacy, the ones that are doing it for the right reasons, like yourself, it's not oh, I know this thing, so I'm going to go be loud about it. It's trying to make it better for the people coming behind you. And I've said that the last 3 or 4 episodes. It's always, I lived through this and I had a tough time. So that means there's somebody else out there that's having a tough time too. I've learned a little bit. Let me help.
Yep.
And you said something else that I really, when my mom was a school teacher in like one of the lowest paid parishes in Louisiana. And we were also on just that leading edge of not being able to get assistance. And I don't think people understand that leading edge right there is incredibly difficult for families, because people look at you like, oh, well, you're doing fine, or you would just go get food stamps. It's like, we can't, or we would, because we need that, because you're in that space where it's okay, well, can we buy name brand, or do we have to buy the dented cans this week?
Right. And secondhand, furniture. And I think the thing that's difficult for us is we were driving 10-year-old vehicles with 100,000 miles and buying secondhand clothes for our kids. And we nursed. I breastfed the kids, even when it was difficult. And I probably should have switched to formula because we couldn't afford formula. And people hear that. I'm like, no, like, we didn't get assistance. We couldn't afford formula. Also, I married an offensive lineman who has giant children who grow very fast. So like, I really could not afford to buy their formula, like, I had to figure it out. And
your husband's not a small man.
he's not a small man, and his children aren't small. So thanks for that, and all of the gift that left me for kids. But it was really difficult. And with student debt, we were living more than $1,000 a month below the Wick eligibility line. But when you look at like Wick and SNAP eligibility, it doesn't take into account student debt. When you look at student debt repayment, it didn't take into account household size, right? So it just said like, oh, well, you have a household that makes this amount of money. And it's like, well, there's also another person with debt in the household, and also, 2 and then 3 kids to feed. And so it was just a really tricky time, and it was difficult because it felt like there was no one who understood, and it very much felt like we were on an island, and that we just sort of fell through all of the loopholes. And so then as those conversations started happening and saying like, actually, there's this loophole in that, or that there's this and that. And so that's given me a really unique opportunity to raise that conversation to our decision makers and our policy makers and say, hey, do you realize that this is what's going on? Or, hey, this thing that you think is doing this is not helping the way you think it is. Let's have a conversation about it, because you're right. There's spouses coming behind me, and they should not have to go through what I went through the way that I went through it. I don't want them to feel how I felt about myself, and my ability to provide for our family. And also, when you're in that season, like, you don't know even what you need. You don't know where to go
Right.
for help, right? So how do we create standard operating procedures that help these families when this happens? And now we have more data about food insecurity.
Mhm.
Before, when I was experiencing it and then even starting to talk about it, it was still a very hushed topic. It was still very anecdotal and just stories. Now we have data both from the
Mhm.
Department of Defense and Rand Corporation. 1 in 4 military families are struggling to put food on the table. And contrary to popular belief, the most common rank that it is happening in is our E5 to E7 counterparts. So these are our leaders. These are
Mhm.
our enlisted leaders. They've got more responsibility on the job than ever. They don't qualify for assistance. They're not asking for help from their command because they're also part of the leadership team.
Mhm.
And these are our families that are falling through the cracks that still don't make enough to get by and take care of their families adequately, but no longer qualify for assistance. Those are the families that really deserve to have people like myself, sort of making a
Mhm.
lot of noise and having uncomfortable conversations.
And there's also this misconception that, oh, well, y'all are in the military, that y'all are provided for, y'all are fine, y'all get all this extra money for stuff, and it's like, and similar to yourself, my wife is an officer. She went to vet school before she joined the Air Force. So like people would be like, "Oh, well, your wife's an officer. Y'all are fine." I'm like, "We have officer-sized bills." Like,
Officer says debt.
yeah, I'm like vet school is not cheap. Like, what do you think we're dealing with over here? Whenever you're paying a literal mortgage every month just in student loans for
Right.
one
Yeah.
person, and not even counting mine,
Hmm.
it that stuff adds up real quick.
Yeah.
And you
We
would
figured it
think,
out. We paid off our student debt. We were very intentional about
mhm,
it, but it equates to, we paid it off in 8 years,
mhm,
and it's about 2.5 years worth of salary
yeah,
for my husband that's just gone. That's just not a part of our household. So,
mhm,
when we talk about income, or we talk about debt, like, let's discuss that as a 1 income family of 5, we were missing 2.5 years
yeah,
worth of income. Like, in one of the most expensive places to live in the country. We spent 5 of those 8 years, in Alaska. So,
right,
like, let's have that conversation. And I had somebody message me last year asking, don't you get a pay raise when you get married? Like, isn't that why people do it? I was like, this is a really great question. I said, technically, yes, your housing allowance goes up
mhm,
about $200 when you gain a dependent. It does not increase for future dependents. So whether
mhm,
you're married with 6 kids or just simply married, the increase is the same. I said, but nothing else changes. You don't
yeah,
get more food allowance. You don't get more pay. You don't get
mhm,
any of that. And military spouses have an unemployment rate that's 10 times the national average, depending on which statistics, 6 to 10 times the national average.
mhm,
So we're unemployed. A lot of us are educated and driven. So we've got debt from
oh
getting
yeah,
all this education, right? We're all millennials. We all drink the Kool-Aid. We went to school to get a good job. Like, now we can't pay for our bills, and
right,
we can't pay for our student loans, and we've got these educated men and women who are following around the mission. And the
mhm,
reality is that the tempo of military life often means that it's very difficult to balance 2 full-time working parents and being so nomadic, and have any sort of consistency
mhm.
for your kids. And so it is difficult. There are choices that we've made for our family, but that doesn't mean that we're any less deserving of support, or just a voice at the table when these decisions are being made.
And you would think something as important as food insecurity is, because like you said, we've got all this data now
Yeah.
that keeps coming out talking about why this should be a topic of conversation, why more people should take it seriously. But it really hasn't been your experience that everybody takes it seriously. Like they don't see it as a problem. How have you been able to fight through that and make people see what you're talking about?
I think one of the interesting things to understand about food insecurity, and this is how I've explained it to people recently, it's a secondary problem. So
Mhm,
it's related to not having access to affordable childcare, or not, where I am right now, very expensive housing. So not being able, being house poor, not having a second income, having student debt, all of these different things could be the catalyst and the cause for why families are experiencing food insecurity. Sometimes it's chronic, and sometimes it's just acute. It's after a move, or after the transmission blows in the car, right? All of these things until you get your feet back under you. Military Family Advisory Network is a fantastic organization. They do lots of research, and they came out in June of 2022 with causal data. They said, okay, now we've
mhm,
got these numbers about food insecurity. Why is this happening? And 4 of the main reasons were a recent PCS, loss of spousal income, growing your family, whether, through adoption or through birth, or even sometimes we've seen families who are bringing in extended family members or siblings, right? But adding another mouth to feed, we'll just call it that, adding another mouth to feed, and then an unexpected financial burden, like transmission blowing in the car, or getting your move reimbursement, or your broken stuff from the movers denied. And they say, sorry, like we're not fixing that. They broke a washing machine of ours one time. And they said, well, do you have video of the washing machine working? How can you prove that it broke in the move? I'm like, I'm a family of 5. Why would I
load a broken washing? You know how much I use that washing machine?
Like, I ain't got time for a broken washing machine. Like, I need it working, right? But they didn't pay for that. So that was after relocating and doing, safety or security deposits and all that. In that instance, we had purchased a home. So we just closed on this house. We just done all of these big expenses. And then now I have to go buy $1,000 washing machine, right? Because I'm a family of 5 and I need that thing to be working real well. I can't do the cheap guy. Like I need that thing working, and they're just expensive, right? So all of these things cause food insecurity. Those are some of the main reasons. Or an external system shock, like an ice storm in Texas, or a hurricane, something like that, that really shocks the system. So it's a really complex topic. And so when I explain it to people, that it's not always just spouses need jobs, or it's not always just housing. Every family scenario is different. And that's why it's important to understand all the different things that can impact your household's economics that might cause you to have difficulty meeting your basic needs, like buying food. There's 2 camps when I'm telling people about this. One is, oh my gosh, I had no idea. What can I do? How can I help? Who do I call? Where do I donate? What can I do? And the other camp is, that's not real. There's very rarely that I run into someone in the middle ground that's like, huh, you don't say. Like, nope, it's usually like, oh my gosh, what do you mean that military families are food insecurity at double the national rate? Our national, number of children and families that are struggling to put food on the table is 12.8%. Military is 24%. It's like, we're double the national average. And we want to talk about why retention and recruiting are having some difficulties with their numbers, right? Well, 1 in 4 families can't put food on the table. So it's a good conversation to have. And it is hard. And I have had people tell me to my face that it's not a real problem. I had somebody tell me once that I was making up the problem so that I could present myself as the solution. So if the military community is relying on Heather Campbell to solve the problems, then we're in a really big pickle. Like, I just moved and my house is a disaster. So please don't rely on me for your problem solving, because I can't even get everything. I can't even get furniture assembled the right way right now. So, it's interesting the things that people will say. I find it's often either, well, it was hard for me, it should be hard for you, or, well, you guys are just entitled and you don't want to work, or just coming up with uneducated reasons of like, well, this isn't a thing, or that's not a thing. I had somebody, I had a reel on Instagram talking about food insecurity. Someone commented like, but I see there's Orgain in your pantry. And it's like, if you knew the cost of food, you would realize how cheap of a meal replacement Orgain is. When we break it down to the per serving, right? Like, this is what I do. I'm a registered dietitian who specializes in feeding families. Let's break this down to the per meal cost. Orgain is actually a very, very cheap meal replacement when we're talking about the fact that somebody's drinking that instead of having a meal. Let's have that conversation. Also, I think I commented on it, like, this is a really great example of victim blaming and avoiding uncomfortable conversations. Thank you so much for setting an example for the audience.
And why do you always take the high road? I'd have been like, tell you something, mister.
Yeah. Like, just like, hey, this is a really great example of what not to do. Thank you so much for lending that to our audience so they can all see what you did. Thank you. I appreciate it. You made my life easier. So, it really is sort of choosing your battles. One of the things with this type of work, advocacy, especially within the military community, I do not wear the uniform. I did not take an oath to protect and serve. Instead, I took an oath to stand by the man who protects and serves. And so I am his most trusted confidant. I am his teammate. I am his partner. And while we are building our life together, I also have to be really intentional of how I engage, because some of these conversations, especially about uncomfortable topics,
Mhm.
do come back to him. Yes, it's illegal. Yes, it can't happen. But it has happened to us, where he has faced retribution because of my work. And so things like that on
Right.
Instagram, like, this isn't worth my husband getting a call from his boss. Like, nope, not for, not for Joe Schmo on the internet.
Right.
Um, yeah.
And that's really unfortunate because there's so many spouses that, and you're not the first person I've heard that from. There's other spouses that are working in that advocacy space that they would really love to be able to take that harder line stance and truly like be on the grindstone about, no, this is a thing you need to listen, but because their spouses are still active, they don't, either exactly like what you just said, either they've kind of pushed a little hard and their spouse got called on the carpet for it, which, like you said, it's not supposed to happen. It's
But
not
it
supposed to be a
does.
thing, but it does, and we all know it does.
Yeah.
And so they don't feel like they can push as hard as they can, so they have to kind of be like I just said, you always take the high road about things. And I think that's why some of y'all have friends like me where I'm like, oh, let me tell you something. Like, I
I
probably
think
shouldn't do it either because my wife is still active duty, but I'm just like, she hasn't got called on the carpet for anything I've said yet. I know it's going to happen eventually, but
I think, my husband's just really great, and he will joke all the time and be like, "Well, Heather's the smarter of the two of us," and I will tell anyone who will listen that he is the better of the two of us, and he pushes me to be better because he makes me feel like I'm garbage because he's so good. He's such a good human. But that poor man has to listen to me word vomit all the things that I wish I could respond in some of these emails and messages, and like he sees some pretty ugly things that I say. So
uh,
I usually just save it for him to have to like absorb and calm me down. And then I can, say something nice. And I'm like, well, you proofread this email that I'm going to send. And he's like, just delete the email. Like, you're not sending that. And I'm like,
just
yes, I
just
am.
just
I
write
am
it
sending
in
it.
your notes. Like, read this. This is what I
Yeah,
would have
read,
said.
see attachment. Yeah. And so it's interesting and it is difficult to navigate. But I also have been really lucky in having peers that are fellow advocates, like Megan, who coined that term accidental advocate. We don't overlap often, right?
Right.
Because she works in PCS reform and I work in
Mhm.
food insecurity. But in the few areas we do overlap, it's great because I know who to call.
Right.
But also, I can call her and unload just the garbage that I am
Uh-huh.
carrying that feels so difficult. And she'd be like, I'm not carrying that same garbage, but same, here's mine.
Yeah.
And having these advocates next to me in EFMP, in housing reform, in spouse employment, in childcare, in PCS, and having this team of people beside me who are each running in their lane,
Mhm.
who are my peers and my encouragers and my inner circle, who really who get it. And I think
Yeah.
that's one of the most difficult parts of military spouse life, is trying to connect in a new duty station, right? Like I am.
Mhm.
Being like, oh, I work from home. And someone's like, oh, are you like indirect sales? I'm like, no, no, I work
No.
in advocacy. And they're like, oh, what kind of advocacy? I'm like, I primarily work with people on Capitol Hill and the Pentagon about quality of life for military families and food insecurity and one for military families. And then I don't get invited to other social events after that. So, but I'm also like not a normal working parent because my kids are young. So I'm still
Right.
mom first and spouse first, and then, advocate hat in the nooks and
Mhm.
crannies of my time that it allows. So it makes it hard to connect all the time in a local space. So I'm very thankful to have a network that's virtual that I can still stay connected with.
And that's a shame though, because like, I don't know, maybe it's just because my brain works a little bit different. Like if I hear somebody that's doing something really cool and like has meaning, I usually want to get to know that person because those people are more interesting. Like if, oh, do you work in sales? How many people work in sales? Like, I mean, seriously, like you make cold calls, you try to sell something, you maintain relationship with the client. That's great. Those people are needed. That sounds boring to me.
Yeah.
Like I would rather talk to somebody that has an issue. They're like, no, here's the data. Military families are 24.5% more likely to face food insecurity than the national average. That makes me go, wait, really? Like, what are we doing about that? How can we elevate this? So that's really sucks that people are like, okay, yeah, we're just gonna not call Heather again. Like,
Yeah, like she's a lot. And I try to not like data dump and nerd dump
mhm,
because I am a nerd, and I think it goes back to being in that doctoral program, right?
right.
And being a researcher at heart. Like this is who I am. This is what I
Mhm,
do. I was pursuing a career in research. So if you tell me there's data out there and there's statistics, like you better believe I'm going to go find the original source. But then
right.
also I think that served me very well in advocacy because I'm not going in with just anecdotal stories or
Mhm,
anecdotal data. Like I'm going in with the original source. I've written multiple pieces where I hyperlink to the DoD data and I hyperlink to this. And so it's really difficult to argue with objective data, right?
right.
And that's where my like type A scientist brain lives, is like, okay, well, let's get some data on it and then we
Mhm,
can present that. And so that has made a really compelling argument, specifically with food insecurity, but also like I'll dive through the DoD archives to figure
mhm.
out how they're calculating COLA or BAH like on a weekend during a bubble bath. And I'm like hollering out at my husband, like, you know that this is in these archives. You think other people are looking at this? And he's like,
No.
no, other
They're
people aren't nerds like that. And I'm like, but it's all here, it's on public, websites. And he's like, no, other people don't do that, Heather. That's very
they're looking at cats on their phone, Heather. They're not looking at the DMs.
I know. I rely on him to send me the funny dog reels. So my Instagram is like half advocacy. It's
Mhm.
like advocacy, moms, fat bears right now because I'm an Alaskan. It's
It's
Fat Bear
Fat Bear
Week.
Week.
It's Fat Bear Week, and then funny dogs. So it, probably looks like a psychopath runs my Instagram or something because it's like a mix of things I look at and then that my
Uh-huh.
husband sends me.
I send my wife goat videos. My wife loves goats. Kelly is infatuated with especially pygmy goats.
Yes.
And
Oh, they're so
so that
cute.
that is that is our love language. I will send her goat videos on her Instagram every day, like all day long.
For a while, we went on a rabbit hole for panda videos because pandas are just roly poly and they
Hmm.
just fall and they roll and we send them to each other so that we
Hmm.
can remember to find to show the kids, right? So it's
Right.
typically either something that, hey, I want you to see this, but then it'll be something that's like, oh, I sent that to you so we can send it to the kids.
Hmm.
And so we'll be like, hang on, let me show you the video daddy sent me. And so it'll be, wait, nope, don't watch that one. That one's
No,
not
no.
funny for you. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
red pandas are my thing because they're always like, "Come at me, bro." And
Have you
it's
seen the one with the rock?
yes,
Like where the pandas like,
yep.
yeah,
And
so
then it's
you know what I'm talking about.
100% because Kelly sent it to me because it's like the rock, the panda's like sniffing. It's like, yep, it's a rock.
Yep. Yeah. I'm like, whoa, when did this
Yeah,
rock get here? Like, oh, it's a rock. Okay.
it's a rock.
Yeah.
They're great. Oh, that's probably gonna be my next tattoo is a red panda.
Red panda.
I'm
Yeah.
100. I'm 100% serious. I told Kelly I need a goofy tattoo, and it's gonna be a red panda.
I think that you have to like find ways that to just disconnect from some of the stressors of this
Hmm.
life. And, it can't all be doom and gloom and what's going wrong in the world or in the military space, but you just have to find ways to intentionally cultivate joy and to
Yes.
within your own household, within your marriage, within your own
Mhm.
mental well-being, and just find things that are funny. And for us, it's funny dog videos. And now that's a part of my daily life that that like we're putting the kids to bed and we're scrolling for funny dog videos.
Hey, I'm here. I'm here for it.
Yeah.
I'm absolutely here for it. So we've discussed because you and I talk fairly often via social media or text message or
Mhm.
whatever. And one of the things that you've done recently was you were a part of it was the special operations cookbook community thing that you
Yes.
so how did you get invited to that? Because that's really cool.
It was really cool. So this was right before the pandemic shut down. We have and you have a lot of the times, I'm sure you guys have it for like medical career group spouses, right? Or there's like military officer spouse group like in Facebook where you can
Hmm.
like my spouse got picked up for this school, or what does this terminology mean, right? So
Hmm.
there's one that's military spouse dietitians, and
Okay.
it's, hey, I'm leaving my duty station. Is anybody PCSing and that kind of thing? But then
Mhm.
there will also be projects or different things we can team up on, or just vent and be like, guys, this is really hard.
Right.
And so something came through there asking for um, spouses. I believe it was either through there or through another group I'm in, but saying, hey, we're going to do this project about family meals, and it's
Hmm.
sponsored by Harvard University and the Family Dinner Project, and it was under Military Special Operations Family Collaborative, and it was specifically addressing the importance of the family table in military family resilience. And they
Hmm.
use the special ops community because they have such a high tempo of not being
Yeah.
home. And even when, because it's male dominated career field. So
Mhm.
even when dad is home, dad's not mentally home. So how do we create routines and just rhythm of life that allows dad to come in and be part of the family life and allow dad to connect when he's gone? How do we intentionally create conversation starters that
Mhm.
are building these relationships when dad is here, right? And how do we keep connected to feeling like we're with dad when dad's not here?
Mhm.
And so that's what the project was. And there were six of us total on the final project. Two of us are dietitians. Every single spouse is a special operations spouse except for me. Um, I'm married to just a regular Air Force. He's not a pilot. He's not a maintainer. Like just a regular Air Force dude.
Uh-huh.
But because we had been in a remote location,
Mhm.
and he had about a 2 year time of our 3 years, our first time in Alaska, where he was gone a week, home a week, gone a week, home a week.
Yeah, I
And
remember that he
so,
was gone a lot whenever we were up there the first time.
yeah, he was gone a lot. So I didn't, there was no childcare there. My kids weren't even old enough for preschool.
Mhm.
So I was balancing this like revolving door of dad home, dad not home, dad home, not dad not
Mhm.
home, and some of the difficulties that aligned with the special ops community. And I'm a dietitian. I
Mhm.
specialize in family nutrition. And so they were like, you know what, given your expertise and your experience, like you're our honorary author in the book. You get to be in. And I
Nice.
spent the majority of the 3 years that we were working. One of our members moved to Germany. So, I mean, we really
Mhm.
were like, and I was in Alaska. So we're coordinating time zones and
Right.
trying to talk. And it really was the majority of the project was just me learning from these amazing women
Mhm.
and the things that they've done for their families, the ways that they've supported their service members, the things that they've seen in their community, and learning a lot more about them. And this was the same time that the pandemic shut down.
Mhm.
And so we're talking about the importance of family meals. I'm writing a paper on decision fatigue and feeding families for a peer reviewed journal, and then also starting to volunteer with Independent. And I pitched this idea about six
Mhm.
or 9 months after the cookbook project started. I said, hey, nobody's talking about how to feed your family well on a budget. There's budget classes and there's
Mhm.
maybe like a nutritionist at the GNC. They cut a lot of the dietitians for military dependents. Like I want to create this thing that I've taught in multiple bases in multiple
Mhm.
places. Like I want to bring this into Independent, and I want to do this. So through the MSoft project and the book, I actually was able to start the Fuel the Homefront workshop series with
Nice.
Independent, which was sponsored by the Department of Defense in May for MilSpouse Month. So we got to
Mhm.
teach it worldwide, which was really cool. But it all came from really learning more about my community and learning alongside these women for this cookbook. And now it's out. It's part sort of family resilience building,
Mhm.
part cookbook. So there's recipes in there and there's stories. And there's a lot about the community, about the things that they've been through. It's endorsed by lots of different military leaders. It's endorsed by Chef Irvine. So that was really special to
Nice.
get his support for this project. Um, and it's been really neat to see how that all came together. It was a lot of coordination and a lot of
Mhm.
work, and I'm very thankful that I got to be on the team and learn from all of them.
And that goes to so I got to speak with Ellen Summy last week, and we spoke specifically about military spouse employment, and as I was told you, like that was yet another video where your name came up because we started talking about food insecurity, and I was like, "Hey, do you know Heather?" And everybody's like, "Of course I know Heather because she's amazing."
Yeah, she makes
Um,
a lot of noise. Like we all know who she is.
but it has never been like that. It's always been like, "Oh my gosh, Heather's awesome," and I mean, I texted you that offline, so
Yeah.
I'm not just saying it for the
Yeah, I
recording.
know you texted like your name came up. I was like, oh
Oh
Lord, here we
God.
go. Like, all right, what is it this time?
But a lot of what you just said to me is the power of the military spouse. You talk about coordinating across time zones. I mean,
Yep.
you're talking about, I mean, not even just across, like, we're not even talking East Coast, West Coast. We're talking about German Standard Time
Yeah.
and, Central, like all across continents.
Yep.
You're
Yep.
talking about being able to collaborate with people that are, may have different views than you. You're talking about seeing an issue and taking on head first. I mean, this is what I try to tell people, like military spouse superpowers is doing all these things while also living in temporary living facilities or moving houses or
Right.
PCSing while your spouse is deployed or TDY.
Mhm.
That's the stuff that we do well. And you've done all of this constantly
I have. It's been
because
a
you just moved and you're getting ready to move again.
I did. Yeah. We were unhoused for 91 days. My daughter, we were cross country, I don't know, like a truck stop or something at a
Mhm.
park, or we were somewhere. Some little kid was like, "Oh, you guys live here?" And oh, I think we went to the Battle of the Bay, the San Francisco Giants and the Oakland A's. So we got
Nice.
to go to the game. Facing the bay. It was awesome. And there was a little girl playing, like, "Oh, are you guys stationed, or it's such and such?" And we're like, "No." And my daughter goes, "No, we live in our car." I was like, "Oh my God." She's not wrong, but, like, we don't actually live in our car. I mean, technically right now we do, and I don't have an address, but, like,
Like,
we don't.
we kinda do, but we kinda don't.
Yeah, and in the meantime, I'm, like, emailing, a congressional team that was heading
Mhm,
up to Eielson to do a visit about, some things going on up there. They sent teams, from both chambers of Congress
mhm.
up to look at some things. And so they I was in contact with them before they went and during their visit. And so I'm like literally like driving into Missouri and I'm emailing them. I was like, real talk, I've got a pause in our PCS. Do I need to fly up to Eielson for your visit, or you guys got it? Like, you need me to come? Um, and like we're
I
in CLF and I like went up to AFA in DC and I was like, well, all my business clothes are packed. I didn't plan on being unhoused for this long. Like, I guess I better buy some clothes, but also, I don't want to replace something I already own.
Right.
We're post PCS, which is thousands of dollars waiting for reimbursement. So like I need to get some clothes that look okay for me to go to Washington DC to meet with these leaders, but also on a budget, because the only pair of pants I had kept out were like yoga pants and a pair of
Mhm.
ripped jeans. And I was like, I for sure cannot roll up into DC in these ripped jeans. Like, no.
Just grab you some Vans and you'll be alright.
Like, let me show you all the ways that I don't belong here. Like, look at what I'm wearing, right? And so, but this is what we do.
Right.
And it's so interesting to me when I talk to people who aren't in our community, especially
Mhm.
those of us who are advocating, like, wow, that's so amazing that you do that. But my story's not special. Like, it's just like so many of us, where I signed up my kids for swim lessons and flag football
Mhm.
from the road, and I
Mhm.
used a local friend's address. Jenny Lynn Stroop is another military spouse, another influencer in our space. She works with Hiring Our Heroes. And she's like, "Oh, all that stuff the movers forgot to pack. There was a cabinet that wasn't packed that we found
Oh
way too
gosh.
late." She's like, "Just
Mhm.
ship it to me, ship it to my house." And
Nice.
then we signed up for flag football using her address,
Mhm.
and all my kids' gear got sent there. And I was like, I forgot to tell you that I also used your address to sign up
By
for
the
this flag
way.
football. So, and she's like, "Did you ship?" I was like, "I did. I will come over and get that. I'm really sorry." But this is so much of what our community does, because we're doing the best that we can to be the foundation for our families and be the glue. And where we live is changing, and our church and our dentist and our car shop and the school, and whether or not daddy is even home, that all
Right.
changes. The only thing that is constant for my family is me and my
Yeah.
ability to be there, and to hold everything together and to create normalcy. If we're living in a hotel, if we're
Mhm.
living in our car, if we're moving, 3 out of 4 summers, like that all relies on me,
Mhm.
um, which impacts my ability to work because my brain space is important. But it's the same thing that so many of our peers are doing. We all do this. We just are so busy and so drowning in it that we fail to see how much of a superpower it is, because it really is quite remarkable.
It really is, because I mean, everything you just said, I mean, whenever we moved here, we got lucky, the White Songs, who, they're we got
Yeah.
lucky enough that they live about a mile up the road from us. Um,
That's so great.
not
Oh, I'm
not
so
s
jealous.
not saying that's entirely the reason we picked this area to live here, but it definitely helped.
But it
Uh,
was a big factor.
it
Yeah.
was a big factor.
Yeah.
So, whenever we came house hunting up here, got to hang out with them,
Yeah.
and it was one of those things, like, it was, matter of fact, it was our anniversary weekend, and the movers called, like, "Hey, we're delivering household goods Monday." I'm like, "We're still in Georgia." Like, "Oh, living in our camper in Georgia." It's like, "Oh, well, I guess we're going to Ohio this weekend." So, load up, drive to Ohio, and unload the house on your anniversary, and head back because Kelly hadn't out processed yet.
Oh my gosh.
But
Yes.
that's
And
just
it's just
it.
what we do.
Yep.
Like, okay, well, that wasn't on my plan, but I guess that's
Mhm.
something that we're dealing with now. But one of the neat things about military spouses is we're all researchers, right? We're
Hmm.
all learning, the dentist in the car shop and the, whatever. We're very intentional about relationship building. We're expert community builders because we
Hmm.
have to build community. We can't just show up in a place and expect life to just eventually fall into normal, because then we're leaving again. So it is important that we are making connections, that we are feeling grounded, that we are feeling part of the community. So we do, military spouses jump into the PTA, we
Hmm.
jump into the little league coaching, we jump into all of those things because we want to build a network and build a community around ourselves, and make a life for our families. But also, some of us are kind of pissed about the way things are going in our community, and so
Hmm.
we're just raising our voices about it and saying, hey, I'm going to keep doing this thing over here, but you need to know what my people are over here facing, because this is a big deal and you should know
Right.
about it.
And that's what, with food insecurity, like you said, it ties into so many things.
Yeah.
It ties into the spouse unemployment, which, if people want to hear more about that data, they can listen to my episode with Ellen. But you know, the national average for spouses has consistently been, I still have my notes right here, it's 22%.
Yep.
During COVID, it shot to 38%
Yep.
unemployment. And there's no way that a family can be expected to function fully at their full capacity whenever you were looking at 38% unemployment.
There's a statistic, I want to say it's like 66 or 68%, but I remember it's about 2/3 of Americans
Mhm.
agree that we need two incomes to function comfortably.
Yeah.
Yet we have this military spouse unemployment problem, right? And one of the things I say to people a lot is that we have a military that functions like we have someone at home handling everything,
Mhm.
and pays us like we have someone else at home getting an income.
Yeah.
And we have to choose. You're either going to work us like we've got someone else working in the house,
Mhm.
like there's two working parents, or you're going to pay us like we don't have another income. But we can't have it both ways. You
Mhm.
can't expect that there's Mr. or Mrs. service member at home handling it and then not cover the entirety of the household bills. I actually have someone I met with last week who's going to the Pentagon in the future and meeting with some senior leaders. And they're like, can I quote you on that? Like, will you send me exactly what you normally say? Can I quote you? And I was like, yep. And do you mind if I, use your name? I was like, no, they've probably heard me say it already. So it's
Like, you're going to say it. They're going to, like, oh, you talked to Heather. And they're going to be like, yeah, we did.
Yeah, I had an article in military.com last fall, and I had a friend whose husband worked in the office of the SecDef at the time, and she sent
Mhm.
me a PDF copy of it, and it went live on a Friday, and on Monday morning she emailed me and goes, "Hey, have you seen this?" And I was like, "Yeah, yeah, no, that's me. That's me." And she goes, "Had you already seen it?" I said, "No, I saw it. I didn't expect it to be an OSD the next day." She goes, "Oh, it's all over the Pentagon today." I was like,
Yay.
cool, cool.
That's
So then, that was a fun lunch date with my husband that day. I'm like, hey, so I got an email this morning. So this might come up in your staff meeting. Sorry.
heads up.
Yeah, heads
just
up,
just
Heather
remember
Campbell.
you just remember you love me, right?
I had an email once between a 3-star and a 2-star discussing the Heather Campbell situation at Eielson.
We
And
talked
I was
about that a
like,
little bit.
I I didn't know it was a situation. Like I just okay. I mean, all right.
But
Um,
but it's not a situation whenever you're just simply pointing out a problem, being like, here's how we can fix it. That should not classify as a situation ever.
Well, and I think something, with military spouse employment or
Mhm.
childcare, food insecurity, so many of these topics, these quality of life concerns, right?
Mhm.
Housing, these are systemic. These are
Right.
being made, these decisions are being made by people in the Pentagon. These policies are being made on Capitol Hill. And so they don't know, those decision makers and policymakers, they don't know what they don't know, right?
Right.
So we have an opportunity,
Yeah.
like me, to tell them what's really going on, how
Mhm.
these things that you put on paper, basic needs allowance, 24% of military families can't
Mhm.
afford food. Let's create the basic needs allowance. It helps 0.8%.
Right.
Last year, there were 36 people in the entire Department of Air Force. That's Air Force active duty,
Mhm.
Space Force, Guard, and Reserves, 36 people who
Right.
qualified. So it's important to then tell the policymakers, hey, that thing that you thought was going to go so great, it's not
Mhm.
going great. So we have that opportunity, but also when you have an understanding of these big systemic issues
Mhm.
and how they might be more of a concern for your area, like Eielson Air Force Base, I have a sister stationed at 29 Palms, another remote base,
Mhm.
right? So they have different needs than Eielson, but when you understand where these gaps are in some of these support services, then we have an opportunity as our local military community, our installation leadership, and our local, our civilian partners in our
Mhm.
community to stand in the gap for those families. Because the reality is legislation, from advocacy to action takes 5 to 7 years. This is the long game we're talking
Right.
about and getting some of these things changed. And yeah, we can keep talking about it. And yeah, we can keep advocating. But in the meantime, when we understand it well, we can stand in the gap for these families and let
Mhm.
them know, hey, we understand this. Hey, we didn't cause this. Hey, we can't fix this, but here's how we can help in the meantime.
Mhm.
And so, when you're talking about leaders, both civilian leaders and military leaders, it's not a concern of like pointing fingers at where people are doing wrong. No, these are issues in DC.
Right.
Let's understand it so that we know how we can help the families that we have in our care in our local community. And so that's sort of where I get those two camps of like, oh my gosh, I didn't know this
Mhm.
was a thing. How can I help? What can I do? And the other camp of that's not something that we have here, or that's not a real problem. We're not concerned. It's like, well, okay, so I won't put you down on the helpers list then. Okay. All right.
So you don't wanna sign up for my email? Okay.
Okay, great. Like, I won't call you for the food drive. Thanks so much. Yeah.
And that's one of those things I was, we've discussed before of, what can get measured gets discussed. Like you can't, it's very easy for people to get passionate and loud about things. It's harder for people to be like, no, not only am I passionate and loud about it, but here's the data to back it up. Because it doesn't matter. It's if you go, let's say if somebody like me were lucky enough to get an audience with a decision maker. If I just went in and I was like, no, by God, we need to fix this. They'd be like, fix what? Like the thing. We
Yeah.
need to fix this. Like, well, how? I don't know. You figure it out.
Right.
They're going to show me the door.
Right.
They'll be like, bye. But whenever
Right.
you come with actual facts, you can be passionate about it, but you have to show the data and also have a plausible solution.
Yep.
Because then they can take credit for your solution, which makes them happy. But you,
That's true.
but you can show the data and give them a way forward.
And it depends on, who your audience is. Like
Mhm.
if it's just you and I, just some people in the neighborhood, right? Like,
Right.
okay, well, how can I help? Well, for me,
Mhm.
realistically, other than, kind of what I do in my day job, how can I help the families around me?
Right.
What can I do for the neighbor that I just met whose husband was in an accident and had skull fractures? Can I bring you a meal? Like we
Mhm.
literally were moving in. I met her in the driveway. She was heading to the hospital because he
Mhm.
was discharging. And I was like, my kitchen is in boxes, but I am heading to Costco. Can I get you a dinner while I'm there? Like,
Yeah.
what can I do? Right. And so finding these ways that you can support, whether it's in your local community, whether it's
Mhm.
in your actual neighborhood, maybe you know a military family, maybe you know a food bank, maybe your local food bank isn't reaching the military in your area.
Mhm.
Maybe you're at a guard station and there's not a big military support there, right? So how can we find ways to connect with our local communities to have that support? Do we want to contact our state legislators, our federal
Mhm.
legislators? Do we want to partner with a church or a food bank or a volunteering? Are we willing to get our hands dirty in this community, knowing that we're going to build connections and build community that does break apart? People
Mhm.
move, people leave, but the community is still worth it. And you have to know as an audience, okay, and for me as an advocate, okay, I'm talking to someone who wants to know how to help their spouses in their specific unit, or somebody who wants to just know somewhere to send their money for more research,
Mhm.
right? So you have to sort of know what do they have available, and going to say my local mayor and
Mhm.
talking about the National Defense Authorization Act, like that's not going to help.
Right.
He can't impact our federal policy, but I can tell our local mayor where we need support for our installation, right? And so there's all these different ways that you can connect and support in whatever that thing is that you're really passionate about for your community or for the military community. And going in, just like you said, with that data of the
Mhm.
problem and then those actionable steps of in the short term, in the medium term, in the long term. This was something I briefed to our flag officer spouses at the Corona conference. Like, here's what you can do in the short term in your installation. Here's what you can do in the medium. Here's how you can help us in the long game. And here's how you can stand in the gap for military families in your area. The brief that I give to our civilian counterparts is a
Mhm.
little different. Here's what you can be doing for the families in your area, right? But finding those ways when you know where those gaps are,
Mhm.
hey, military spouse employment, here's how you're military spouse friendly. No, you don't just hire them. You give them benefits, you give them retirement vesting, you give them the opportunity to take their job with them when they PCS and to be remote, right? That's actually military spouse friendly employers. And so you kind of have to spoon feed them options to help. And then sometimes you get a lot more involvement.
Well, let's run with that for a second. So let's say somebody's listening to this right now. They go, Heather, I really want to help in my local community. I live, near a base. I'm not military connected, but this is something that I know a lot of military people. What is a step that I can do to start getting involved?
I think that the first thing is going to be, connecting with whomever it is that you know in the community and asking them what they need. Every location is different. For us at Eielson, helping with food, helping with meals was really impactful. There's not a lot of support services there. And so I was quietly kind of under the table feeding families at Eielson for our last year there. And it was an anonymous sign up and it would go out and people would just sign up and I would just deliver them a meal. Ashley Gutermuth is another Air Force spouse. She was doing the same thing. So I sent her my Google form and she was able to do it at her local installation, right? So like that's one idea is just start feeding people, connect with them and see what they need. Maybe they need donations to an airman's attic. Maybe they need people to come serve at an event that they're having. There's all different ways that you can connect if you just start asking at your local community, what is it that your local community needs? I know that Monica Bassett is another food insecurity advocate, and she's running a food pantry at her installation because they had a high prevalence of food insecurity in their county and they didn't have one that could service the military community. So she started a food pantry. Now, you might have a food pantry that already exists on or near your installation. You could partner with them. Maybe it's helping spouses get connected with jobs. Maybe it's hiring them for odd jobs. And honestly, hiring and buying from military spouses and military families whenever you can. You can go on to, there's a website called Spousely. It's like Etsy for military and first responder. And you can go on there. It's started by Monica Fullerton, and everything on there is sold by either a military or first responder spouse. So I've gone on there and had like custom Christmas ornaments made, and anything that you would get from Etsy, you can get on Spousely. And it's specifically supporting these small business owners in our community. So with just a little bit of intentional effort, you can find out what the need is in your local area. And then maybe you don't have the time to serve alongside something, but you can move $20 from your monthly budget to their nonprofit. Maybe I shop at Kroger here, and they have something that like automatically donates to your nonprofit of choice. So I chose the local food bank, and every time I shop at Kroger, anything that could be donated for whatever Kroger system is goes to that local organization. So, kind of figuring out what's in your area and what the needs are is a really good first step.
That's awesome, because I know I'll hear that a lot where people are saying, well, I really want to get involved, but I don't know how. So it sounds like the easy solution for people is just like you said, just go out and start asking questions. Like find that organization, ask the question.
Yep.
Because,
go to your local spouse club, go
yeah.
to your local food bank, go if you're looking for something, or you don't even know about the food bank, go to feedingamerica.org and search where your local food bank is, and then connect with them and say, how are you serving the military community? What can I do? Sometimes it's donations. Sometimes they need someone with base access to be able to drop off a food box.
Right.
Our local food bank needs substitute drivers to pick up from the grocery stores to bring them, the things at the grocery store. Hey, if our normal driver's sick, we need you to sub in and be able to pick up that delivery for us. I'm like, well, yeah, put me on your sub list. Like if I have a morning,
Right.
I can go to Kroger and pick up the stuff and drive it over, right? So there's different ways that you can find to connect. And then also, if you're looking on a more, a larger scale, you can go to organizations like National Military Family Association, NMFA, or Military Family Advisory Network. Those are two really big ones. Maison is another one, a Jewish response to hunger, that are specifically functioning in quality of life for military families and food insecurity. And they're going to have ways that you can donate, ways that you can help with a local event. There's going to be lots of options on there that you can find. How do I want to connect with my time, with my money, with my talents, with my excess? Where do I want to serve and how? There's no shortage of opportunities for people to donate their time and energy. It's just figuring out which one you want to do.
Right. And it's like we said at the beginning, like everything about this is doing, the ones that are doing it for the right reason, they're not doing it for notoriety. They see an issue, they see a gap, and they want to fill it. And that's really true. Like, to me, like, what advocacy boils down to is wanting to fill a gap and educate at the same time.
And, maybe it's something that you've got someone in your community, or maybe, someone who's listening to this and you're not interested in getting involved in like a big, specific, I want to help with food insecurity,
Mhm.
right? But if you know someone who's in the military or military connected, just build community with them.
Mhm.
Offer to get their kids from the bus stop. Yesterday, one of my new neighbors got my daughter from the bus stop so that my husband and I could finish up a late lunch because he was off work and the kids had school. So we took a day date, and someone got the kids from the bus stop so I could have an extra 15 minutes to drive home and not rush, right? So
Mhm.
something as simple as like, can I watch the kids? Can I bring you a meal? Hey, I'm going to the store. What can I pick up for you? Those things really mean a lot, because we do fall through the cracks with our local communities. You either are involved in a military community where everybody's always moving, so you have no consistency, or you get somewhere and you're in a civilian community and you'll be there for a few years, but you have people that don't want to get involved with you because you're
Right.
going to leave.
Mhm.
Um, their kids don't invite, our kids to play dates because, well, those Campbells, they're going to move anyway.
Mhm.
We don't want to have a relationship with them. We don't want to build community with them because they're going to leave. But I assure anybody who's listening, it is always, always, always worth it. Military families want to be included. We want to feel like we're part of the community. We want to be seen. And we always jump in with both feet. You will not regret involving your emotions and your time with the military family, because they will absolutely reciprocate it.
And I know this is going to sound a little counterintuitive what you just said, but I think you'll agree with me at some level. One thing that I wish military spouses ourselves would get better at is when people do say, "Hey, can I do this thing for you?" Our knee jerk reaction is, "Thanks, but I got it."
No, I got it. I'll handle it.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
is. I was speaking with another lady, and that was what she was saying, was that whenever, because she was going through cancer treatment for ovarian cancer, and that was her knee jerk reaction when she's going through chemo and people are trying to help her. She's like, "No, I'm good, I got it." And then she finally said, like, one of her friends was like, "No, I'm doing this thing for you."
Yeah, we just send her stuff anyway.
Yeah, like, I'm just doing this for you. You don't get to say no. And she was
Like,
like,
okay, send me
"Oh,
your address.
okay,
If you don't send it to me, I'm going to ask one of your friends for your address, and I'm sending you
yeah."
stuff anyway.
So I really I wish that more spouses would be willing to kind of not necessarily bring their wall all the way down, but at least have some gaps in it to let other people in, so they do get to see all the things you just said, how we love to help out, we love to connect, we love to be involved, even if we sit there saying, "No, I got it." And I know I am horrible about that. I am the world's worst. Somebody's like, "Hey, Mike, do you need help?" "Nope, got it. I'm good."
I've gotten like more intentional in, as somebody who's a recovering like perfectionist and
Mhm.
I'll handle it person. I've gotten more intentional in my offering of help and support for
Yeah.
someone else. Of, hey, I'm going to bring you a meal next week. Which day works best?
Yeah.
Right. And sometimes when you're really overwhelmed, that decision fatigue, like I don't know what I need right now. Like I don't
Yep.
know. And so I had my son was sick in the spring. He ended up
Mhm.
being very sick for a long time, and we had to fly about 3,000 miles and get surgery on his airway, and it was a really stressful time. We're trying to move, we're trying to do change of
Mhm.
command, and we still didn't have hard orders. Like there was just a lot of things that were really stressful. And I had a spouse who I saw at the play center at
Mhm.
Eielson, and our kids were playing, and she's like, "Are you okay?" And I was just, kind of sitting there, and I was like, "I
Yeah.
need to figure out this." I was like, "I need to take him to the emergency room." This was when he first got sick, and he
Right.
ended up getting admitted that night. We almost got life flighted out of there, and I was like, I've got to figure this out, but we're one car because my car's in the shop in
Mhm.
town. So I need to take my husband with me so that while we're in town, because it's 40 minutes away,
Yep.
while we're up there, after we do this ER thing, which is going to
Mhm.
be all day night, let me at least take my husband so we can pick up the car while we're up there.
Right.
Right. And so, but I've got these other two kids and it's close to dinner time, and I've got to figure out what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
And she goes, well, why don't you let me take your daughter home? We'll feed her dinner. Like, we'll just take her
Mhm.
home. I was like, are you sure? She's
Yeah.
like, and this is another military spouse. She goes,
Mhm.
the girls are already playing. We're heading home to do dinner. Like, let me just take Addie home with me
Mhm.
and we'll feed her. And then my other son, my oldest, had brought a friend to the play date with him,
Mhm.
because he's 10 and he's too cool for the park. So
Yeah.
he wanted like a friend from
Absolutely.
video games, right? Because he's cool. So I straight up asked
Yeah.
friend's mom, I was like, hey, we're heading home. Can I drop my child at your house when I drop your child off? And can you just feed him? Like, I've
Yeah.
got to go to the emergency room. And both of them, then later I'm texting like, hey, so I know it's a school night, but
Mm-hmm.
can they actually sleep over because we're being admitted and we haven't picked up the second car yet, right? And this was military families who were like, I'm going to take your child home and get dinner. I'm going to do this.
Right.
The next day, someone said, hey, what time? I'm ordering you Starbucks
Mm-hmm.
delivery. What time do you want a coffee and a pastry delivered in the morning? And so I
Yeah.
woke up in the morning and they're doing their rounds, and Starbucks was brought to me on
Mm-hmm.
the unit. And another spouse said, I'm coming to town. Do you want this place or this place for dinner? I'm going
Right.
to bring you guys, lunch at the hospital. And that has helped a lot. So if you do have a family that you're wanting to help, or a friend going through
Mm-hmm.
chemo saying, okay, would you prefer that I send you a cozy blanket or cozy socks?
Right.
Would you prefer that I just order you a meal, or do you just want a Grubhub gift card to order for
Mm-hmm.
yourself later? And that really makes a difference. And you get into those seasons where you're on the receiving end and you're like,
Mm-hmm.
thank you. Thank you
Yeah.
for telling me you were just delivering coffee to the hotel. Because if she would have said, do you want me, like, can I get you anything? I'm like, no, I'm
No.
fine.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, hey, I'm going to order
Yep.
Starbucks to the hospital in the morning. What's your unit and what's your Starbucks order?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, here it is. Thank you.
Yeah, because they're not necessarily taking your ability to say no away, but they're letting you know it's happening anyway. So you really just say yes.
And I don't have to do the brain spacing of it,
Right.
right? I don't have to try to figure out what is it that I need help with,
Mm-hmm.
that I can help, that I can ask for. When all of this was happening and my son went in the hospital, I was the scholarship chair for our local spouse club, and
Mm-hmm.
I was in the middle of going through the applications and seeing what was missing so I could contact the applicants
Mm-hmm.
and say, hey, we need this thing or we need this thing. And it's literally spread all over my
Right.
mattress, because then we left for piano lessons. The
Yep.
kids got home. We went to piano lessons. I realized he was in respiratory distress. We went straight to the ER.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, what I really need help with is I need to go finish coordinating these scholarships. And I literally cannot send another person in there because it is personal,
Yeah,
like,
it's all PII stuff.
all PII and like applicants. And I was like, I literally cannot outsource the one thing that is really stressing me out. So when people are like, hey, I'm going to bring you lunch, or I'm going to bring you this. And there was one point that my husband was like, I'm going to tag in, I'm going to go back and do some stuff at the office. When I get back, you go home. And I went home and worked on
Mm-hmm.
these scholarships and then brought the other kids up to the hospital. And so it was, what can I help with? For me, like, my friends couldn't make my son better.
Right.
But they could bring me a meal, or they could make sure that my other kids were taken care of. Or even after that, like, hey, you're home. And I had someone send us a care package that was like puzzles and things that we could do. And when we flew for surgery, I had a spouse who had a Target order waiting near our hotel. And it was like coloring books and
Mm-hmm.
like a dress up outfit and just fun things for the kids, and saying like, hey, we're going to send some love for the kids. So, what day do you want to pick up your Target order?
Right.
And so, yeah, if somebody's listening and they want to know how to connect with military family, or really anybody who's just in
Mm-hmm.
a stressful time, just showing them that you see them, that you appreciate them. And maybe it's not something as fancy as spending money and doing all that, because
Right.
we went through a financial season where I didn't have that ability to order something for someone,
Mm-hmm.
but I could watch their kids, or I could make a double batch of my soup and drop it off. And I can think specifically over our life multiple times when people have said, I had one day that was particularly stressful, and I called a dear friend and I was like, can I just drop off the kids while I go unload the groceries and start the laundry? Because my kid peed his pants in the store, and then the
Mm-hmm.
other kid peed in the car seat, and I have to go start all this pee laundry. Can I please drop the kids and
Mm-hmm.
go unload my car? And I will be back in 1 hour. And she was like, yep. And when you come back, we're going to feed you dinner. And I was like,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, that sounds great. Thanks. Like, and just taking that brain space, not asking somebody who's overwhelmed
Mm-hmm.
what they need. Call me if you need anything. I don't even know.
Where do I even start how to answer that
What do
question?
I need? I need my son to not be sick, and I need,
Mm-hmm.
my kid to not pee his pants in the store, and I need my husband to not be freaking TDY again, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what I need.
And that story is told so many times across so many levels.
Yeah.
And sometimes just having people go, look, I got you, is really just it's that little push, that little helping hand that you need to get through that little rough patch, to where you can take that deep breath and go, okay, I had that hour.
Yeah.
That okay, my friend took my kids for the night. Now I've had a chance. I'm able to refocus, took a deep breath.
Yeah.
Now I'm back in it. And
And
sometimes just
also
having
having that like vulnerability to say like, hey, I need to drop my kids for an hour. Like,
yeah.
there was last summer. But it was one of those days that I was like, the four of us, I've got 3 kids. The 4 of us are not going to make it to the end of the day. Like, no guarantees which of us is not going to make it, but one of us will not make it to the end of the day. We need a break. We need a timeout. And I texted two other military spouses, both of whom have 4 kids. Because do I ask someone who doesn't have kids to like take on my 3, or do I ask someone who also has a lot of kids and gets it to like also take on my 3?
Right.
And I texted her, and I texted these 2 that I trusted, and I was like, it's not going well here today. I need someone to let my kids come play with your kids. Their kids are about the same age.
Right.
Somebody needs to take my kids for a couple hours. I just like, I need you to hear me. I need someone to take the kids. This girl, I will not say her name because I don't want to like embarrass her. She's like, oh, we were going to go over to Chena Lakes and go swimming and fishing. It was summertime. She goes, let me go get the camper. She straight up leaves her SUV in the camper lot, goes and gets her RV that can seat like 9 people.
Right.
Loads up sandwich stuff. She loads up the fishing poles and the paddle boards, and she takes my kids. And I'm like, okay, she can take them for lunch and like go have fun. Mike, she had my kids for 8 hours, and she dropped them off because they had to go to baseball practice. And like, I was like, yeah, like it was such a gift. My kids had a fantastic day. They loved it. I was able to do the things that I needed to finish, but also was able to like take a few minutes and reset and breathe and make sure that I was a version of myself that I want to present to my family and to my children, right? I don't want them to be collateral damage for my chaos. But it's also really hard to be like, hey, y'all, the Campbells don't have it together today, and I need someone else to be the adult in charge. So who wants to take a number?
Anybody that would hear that and go, oh my God, they're lying to themselves, because every parent has been there. I don't care if you have 1 or if you have 10. Every parent has been there. I've got 2. One just turned 11. The other one is 9. There are days, especially whenever Kelly's gone, where they, for whatever reason, they're just like, they just decide they don't like each other anymore. And I'm like, my head's going to explode if y'all don't stop.
Yeah.
And it does, like I said earlier, we're human. We're not supernatural beings that can just be completely zen all the time. There's only so much that we can take before we're going, like I said, it's emotions are going to come out. Maybe they're not the best ones at the time, but they're there. And we all have to have that ability to reset, and having that person you can reach out to where you're like, today's not a good day. I need help.
I need backup.
I've got to have backup today. Throwing up the bat signal and be like, I need somebody to come answer this call. But that's why, like you said, building that community is so important, because like whenever the moving truck showed up here, like I said, my girls
drive up from Georgia.
Our girls are great. They can be super helpful until they're not. And Jason was on a run, and he was like, hey, while y'all are in the middle of this, do you want me to take the girls?
Yes.
And I was like, don't say it again, because the answer is yes. He's like, no, I'm dead serious. Like, we're getting ready to go. I got some errands to run. Me and the girls can walk to the house. And Kelly was like looking at me. I'm looking at Kelly. I'm like, yes, please. And by the time the girls came back, the truck was done.
Oh, that's such a gift. I can usually farm out the kids on like the leaving end of a PCS, right? Because by then you've built community, you got friends, you got, farm out the kids. But man, that arrival of like, I don't know anybody yet, but I really need these kids to go have fun and make new friends so that I can get things done. That is a gift. And it's also, I think it's important. It's not something that was modeled for me growing up of asking for or accepting help. Absolutely not. And I think it's really special for my kids to see that, and to see that like mom is learning, has not learned, but is learning where her boundaries are and when she needs to call out for help. That's a gift for my kids to see that it's not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of knowing my limits and making sure that I am caring for myself and caring for my family and caring for them well. And we started something when they were little of, you make stupid rules when you're a parent, right? Like, absolutely. Please only touch your own private parts in the bath. Didn't think that was a conversation we were going to have, but like, please don't poke your brother's butthole, like, guys, just things that you have with tiny conversations you have with tiny
Yeah.
humans. So we had this rule that you can't talk to someone in timeout. Like it doesn't work if you go over there and play with
Right.
him while he's in timeout.
Absolutely.
So they were like 1, 3, and 4, 1, 4, and 5 maybe. And it was one of those days and they were in the car and it was like the mommy. And the question, I was like,
Yep.
oh my God. And finally I was like, mommy's in timeout. And my son goes, mommy. And he's like 4. He goes,
Uh-huh.
are you in timeout until your attitude is better? And I said, 100%. I am in timeout. Nobody speak to me
Uh-huh.
until my attitude is better. And, it was a little nicer than being like, everybody stop talking to me, please. And so I
Right.
put myself in timeout. And we've done that through the years. And when we were moving into Alaska, my son left his skateboard out and someone stole
Mhm.
it. I'm like, I'm pretty sure another mom probably just picked it up, Eddie. Like,
Right.
I'll send out a call, I'll send out a message. Who's got the skateboard? And he was just yelling and so upset. And I
Mhm.
was like, this is not on me. I didn't leave your
Right.
skateboard out. He's like, well, it's because you said we had to go camping and we had to leave and I couldn't go look for it. I'm like, again, if you would not have left it, I was like,
Yep.
this is not on me. This is you. And he was just like, I'm going to go inside. He goes inside and he comes out about 10 minutes later. I could tell he'd been crying. He was
Mhm.
7, I think, at the time. And he goes, mommy, I went and I took a time out. And I was like, okay. And
Yeah.
he goes, I thought about it. I'm really sorry that I yelled at you about my skateboard. And I hope that we find it, but I'm sorry that I was mean to you when I was mad. And I was like, okay, buddy. I said, well,
Mhm.
I still love you. I'm still going to be here when you're mad. And, he walked off to go play and probably find a skateboard. But
Right.
inside, I was like, look at that. I didn't
What?
know that my kids were learning that when mom is
Right.
in timeout, that like, but now that's the thing for our family is you can
Mhm.
put yourself in timeout. If we are all too much for you and the Campbells are
Mhm.
a lot, we're a loud people group. Like, if we're too much, put yourself in timeout. We're not going to bother you. People aren't going to bother you, but you can put yourself in timeout. So that's just one of those self-regulating mechanisms that we
Mhm.
didn't learn. And so asking for help, being okay, saying, I don't got this. I
Mhm.
need assistance. And also telling the kids, like, guys, that sounds like a really fun activity. I cannot possibly put another thing on my plate today. It is not a good idea for me to add that to my routine. I'm really sorry. And that all comes into learning how can we connect with each other? How can we connect with our community? And also knowing where our limits are. As a people pleaser who wants to feel needed, I will bend over backwards to meet the needs of other people while
Mhm.
ignoring myself. So I need to know where my limits are before I'm calling up and be like, Mike, I'll take your girls. I
Yeah.
just snapped at my kids and like it's not going well today, but sure, I'll take
Sure.
your kids. Fine. That's one of those like I would not be an asset to Team Franklin today. I don't think you should call someone else.
See, and that honesty is like I said, that honesty, that ability to be vulnerable and be open and be honest. It's similar to what you're saying about putting yourself in timeout. At this point, I've lost count of how many times I have not reacted properly to something my kids were doing.
Yeah.
And 10 minutes later, go in the room, sit down with them, and like something that never ever happened with me, and
No.
have and me sit there and explain, look, kiddo, I did not handle, like looking back, I definitely didn't handle that right. Now you're upset because of the way I reacted. I'm upset because of the way I reacted. Let's talk through this now and in a better format. And I love my mom. My mom is fantastic, but if I got yelled at, that was it. Like there was no explaining later. It was
Well, I
just
saw it, like that was not like apologies to
yeah.
kids, nothing like that never happened in my household, but I saw it. Like Danny Tanner always apologized to the girls. He always went back.
Right.
Uncle Jesse was good about it even,
Hmm.
and he's the rebel and like Joey, like they always apologize. Obviously, I grew up on Full House. Like they always apologize, and the Winslows on Family
Yeah.
Matters or Boy Meets World, like the parents always apologized, and that
Hmm.
never happened in my house.
Never, not
It was just
once.
a different time, and
Mhm.
it's important, and that comes back to knowing about yourself, knowing how to
Yep.
take care of yourself, but then also being okay with exposing that vulnerability. Like in my line of work and working in advocacy has really helped share that message. I'm not just someone who's upset about this issue that's going on in my
Right.
community. This has affected us. It's had an impact on us. And that story deserves to be told because it's so similar to other stories. And if I'm getting overwhelmed with my kids when we're trying to unpack, or I'm needing to call in for
Right.
help, then that means that my neighbors are too, and my peers and other members in this community. So not only do I need to know when I need to ask for help, but I can sort of see some of those warning signs in my neighbors or in my
Right.
friends or my peers and be like, hey, can I take the kids on Saturday for a
Hmm.
while? Like, do you have anything to do? Can I just come over and play? Like,
Yeah.
um, that goes a long way in developing those relationships and serving your neighbor. And then, if you have extra brain space, you can join the fight with so many of us to really say, hey, these things that we're dealing with are really hard and nobody's helping us. We're all helping each other, but we're exhausted.
We're all perpetually exhausted, but we're all still in the fight.
Yeah, we're here for it. Like, we're not giving up, but like, we're really tired.
But I could use a nap and a large coffee.
Yeah, exactly.
Not necessarily in that order.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's this is so much of this is just that constant of, because I see how hard it is for me, and like you just said, you see how hard it is for you because you lived it.
Yeah.
That gives your message authenticity, because like I said, I have not been directly affected by it. I know a lot of people that have been because I see it. So when I talk about food insecurity, I'm having to tell other people's stories.
Yeah.
Which does not give my story a lot of weight. I can show the data, but whenever you can actually say, no, here's why this is important, it affected me. Here's the data and how this affected me. It gives your story a lot more weight. It makes people, it forces people to take notice, because if they look at me and they're like, well, he didn't live through this, so they're having to try to imagine another face with it. When they're looking at Heather Campbell and she's the one talking about, this is why food security is important, here's how it impacted my family, they're seeing the person in real time.
But also, like, the families that Kelly takes care of in her job, the families that she's interacting with, and the families that you guys have in your unit, that you, as a member of the leadership team, are in charge of taking care of these active duty members. And maybe you have reserve, but we're responsible for these service members and their families, in addition to the service members and their families that she's literally serving every day at the job. That matters. And sharing their stories and saying, these are the families we're taking care of. Same friend, Monica Bassett, who runs the food pantry at Fort Leavenworth, she's able to share the stories of the families that she's helping, of the families that she knows. And so there's also still authenticity and credibility in that, and saying, this is what's happening in my community.
Right.
Not so much of like, here's the statistics and here's the story, but like, these are my neighbors, these are my peers, these are my friends, these are my kids' friends. Like, this is what we're dealing with. This is what our community is shouldering after 2 decades of war and record unemployment and limited healthcare options of who will still take TRICARE, and struggling with all of these different things. We're also, my community is struggling to put food on the table. Like, we're talking about food, y'all. I'm not talking about wanting a name brand pair of shoes. I'm talking about literally making sure that families can get food on the table. And oh, by the way, even if it is because they made bad financial decisions, because when I was 21, I did real stupid things because I was 21.
Right.
And I was only responsible for myself and the Tuesday night drink special in my college town, right? So like, even if it's due to personal decision or personal, history, these are human beings that we're talking about, and their families, and they're not less deserving of support and help and resources, whether this happened to them or they did it to themselves. I don't care. I don't care how they got here. They are worth helping and supporting and moving forward and continuing to make sure that they are stable for their present and their future. I don't really care how their past got them where they are. And I think that's one of the difficult things we see in advocacy as well. It's because of this or because you did this, or okay, even if that's the case, are they less deserving of help and support? That's
and on top
an
of that,
question,
it is an uncomfortable question, but the follow-up to that is, are they going to get better if we don't help? Are they going to get better if we don't offer support and education and guidance? Or is the cycle going to be perpetual?
Right. You have a young service member who did stupid things with their money and got a stupid car loan, right? This is the story I hear a lot. Well, those young enlisted guys, and they're getting these trucks they can't afford. Okay, cool. Let's say that we've got a guy named Mike, and he bought a car that he can barely afford, and he gets his girlfriend pregnant, and he decides to marry her and make sure that this now wife and baby are taken care of. And now the things that he could barely afford for himself, he sure as heck can't afford because he's got a wife and baby to feed.
Right.
Is he less deserving? Is his family less deserving of support because of what he did when he was 22 years old and only in charge of himself? No. And so that's a really difficult thing. I very rarely have anybody, sort of refute that response
Right.
when I say that. They don't really have anything to say. But also, I've worked in Wick for 2 states. I've worked in advocacy for years. I have literally never met a family that would prefer to buy guns or recreational
Yeah.
vehicles or gaming systems
Hmm.
instead of putting food on their table.
Right.
Literally never. Not anybody who keeps custody of their kids, I'll tell you that much. That's not the case. These aren't the families we're talking about. We're talking about, again, our E5 to E7 are enlisted leaders who are struggling making ends meet and are working harder than ever, and they still can't make it all work, and they need support.
Yes. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I I told you I wanted to be respectful of your time because I know you have another thing to do, and I want to give you time to get ready for that. I could see there's so many other topics that we could dive into just from your personal journey, from things that you've been through and how you've walked through that. I will tell you that you are seriously, I'm honored to be your friend. I'm very thankful that you took time out of your incredibly busy life to talk with me about this issue because it is something that affects our community as a whole. Um, so with that said, Heather, if people want to connect and be involved with advocacy or just connect with you, where's the best place for them to do that?
Best places will be on social media. So if you like reels, if you like some that are funny and some that are truthful and some that are just like, hey, here's the disaster of raising 3 busy kids. Follow me on Instagram, Glory Nutrition.
Mm-hmm.
I share lots of stuff in my stories. I share reels. And so you'll be able to see both a mix of sort of here's how we feed our family well, here's
Mm-hmm.
how we intentionally create that opportunity for connection around the table, right? This comes from
Yep.
that family dinner project and the cookbook with MSOF, the Warriors Table. Like this is how we are doing that in our family as a military family. If you're more interested on the advocacy side and some of the things that I'm working on, some of the projects, some of the things coming up, find me on LinkedIn, Heather S. Campbell. You just go in and search Heather S. Campbell. I should pop up. And those are going to be the 2 best places to connect with me. And hopefully in the very near future, my website will be revamped. There's some things changing, so I won't share
Nice.
that now, but there will be a link on there to book time for education, for consults, and for learning more about this topic and how to get involved and even bringing me into different projects. So that will be in the future, but that is a pipe dream for someday after I get all these boxes out of my house and the packing paper off my floor. I feel like the fire hazard in my living room is taking priority right now.
We like I said, we moved in Father's Day weekend, and I still have boxes in my office. So
Oh, that makes
that,
me feel better. I'm literally sitting next to 6 boxes because our dressers got trashed in a move. So we limped them along and made them
mhm,
work through that duty station, knowing
yep,
they were going on the curb. That also meant that we needed new dressers here. Well,
mhm,
the movers brought in our furniture, our bed, they assembled it. And then we have totes and suitcases and
yeah,
boxes. And I now have 2 dressers that I have to assemble in a bedroom that's no room to assemble it. So I now need to anyway. I'm sitting next to 6 boxes of dressers that need to be put together. But until I put together the dressers, the clothes won't get off the floor. But I can't
right.
put the dressers together because there's clothes off the floor. So the
That's
self-licking ice cream cone that I'm just ignoring.
it's that cycle.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh man. Okay. Well, I'm going to put all of your LinkedIn and stuff in the notes. Again, Heather, thank you so much. You're doing great things, and I hope you know that you're an amazing person. And I can't wait to see what comes next.
Thank you. Yes, I will keep you in the loop like always, and you will definitely get my brain dumping frustrations. Next time I have a real snarky comment that I wish I could send, I'll just send it to you, and then
Send
you
it
can
to
just
me.
like
I'll
give me
definitely
all the
read it.
thumbs up of like, yeah, that's what you should have said.
Absolutely. I will.
Yeah.
I will definitely be that. I'll be that person. Like, no, you should say that, and then in parentheses, don't really say that.
Don't actually say that. That's a really bad idea. Like you don't type that.
Awesome. Well, Heather, you have a fantastic rest of your day. Thank you again for taking time to talk with us. Always a pleasure, and we'll talk again soon.
Yep. Thank you.
See you later.
Bye.